I remember the exact moment everything shattered. He didn't even look me in the eye when he said it, just stared straight ahead at the wall, like it was easier to talk to drywall than to his own wife. My mom said, "If you can't have kids, I should leave you." That sentence hit harder than the diagnosis. I'd known something was off between us for months. The way he avoided me, the way his hands felt more like strangers than home, the awkward silence at dinner, but I still wasn't ready for that. Not from him, not from the man who held my hand during our wedding vows and whispered, "No matter what." Apparently, what came with conditions. We'd been trying to conceive for 2 years, 2 long, agonizing years. Month after month of hope turned to disappointment. The first 6 months, we told ourselves it was timing, stress, work. Then came the tracking apps, ovulation strips, vitamins, doctor visits, the blood tests, the ultrasounds, the results. It wasn't him, it was me. Unexplained infertility, they called it, which basically means, we don't know why, but it's not happening. We were sitting in the car after our 3rd appointment with the fertility specialist. The doctor had just laid it out plainly. Our chances were low, not impossible, but unlikely without intervention. I was already emotionally unraveling when he dropped that bomb. My mom said, "I should leave you." I turned slowly to look at him, waiting for a sign that it was a sick joke. Nothing, no apology, no follow-up, just silence. I whispered, "And what do you think?" He flinched like the words hurt him, like he was the victim here. "I don't know," he said. "She makes some good points." I laughed. I actually laughed. A sharp, ugly sound that didn't feel like mine. "Oh, does she?" He rubbed his hands together like he was cold. "She says we're still young, that I shouldn't waste my future on something that's broken. Something, not someone, not me." I remember gripping the armrest so hard my knuckles went white. I remember blinking fast to keep the tears from falling, like maybe if I didn't cry, I wouldn't break. I said, "You mean I'm broken, right?" "That's what she said?" He looked down, didn't deny it. We sat in that car for almost 15 minutes. No one said a word. Then he started the engine and drove us home like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just carved a hole into our marriage. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to his steady breathing beside me, wondering how long he'd been feeling this way, how long his mother had been whispering poison into his ear. His mom never liked me. From the beginning, she acted like I was some temporary girlfriend who overstayed her welcome, the type to smile sweetly in front of me, and then corner him later to remind him I wasn't wife material, not the type of woman who builds a legacy. I had a job she didn't understand, opinions she didn't agree with, and the one thing she valued most, children, was apparently off the table now. I was a defective product in her eyes, an empty vessel, and my husband listened to her. In the days that followed, he grew colder. He'd come home from work, grunt in my direction, eat dinner silently, and scroll on his phone until bedtime. No more discussions, no more planning our next steps. He didn't want IVF, didn't want adoption, said it was too much, too expensive, too complicated, too artificial. But what he did want was simpler, a life without me. He didn't say it directly, not yet, but I could see it in the way he moved, the absence of love, the absence of effort. One morning, he walked into the kitchen and said, flat out, "I think we should separate for a while." I stood by the sink, hands wet, halfway through rinsing a plate. I said nothing. He continued, "It's just, this isn't working. And my mom said she'd help me get back on my feet. I could move into her guest house." Of course she did. Of course she'd have a place ready and waiting. I finally spoke. "So that's it? Because I can't give you a baby, you're giving up on us." He sighed like I was exhausting him. "It's not just about the baby." I set the plate down gently, dried my hands, turned to him. "Then what is it?" He opened his mouth, closed it, shook his head. "I don't know. I just feel stuck." That word echoed in my skull. Stuck. He looked at our marriage, everything we'd built, and saw a cage. And his mother? She held the key. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said. "Then let's unstick you." He blinked. "What?" "I'll make it easy for you. We're done." His eyes widened. "Wait, don't you think we should?" I walked past him, pulled my wedding ring off, and set it on the table. "No, I don't." He moved out the next day, didn't fight for anything, didn't apologize, just packed a bag and left. I watched him drive away from the living room window and felt numb, completely hollow, like my insides had been scooped out and replaced with smoke. Friends reached out. Some offered support. Others, not so much. One said, "Well, at least now you don't have to deal with a monster-in-law anymore." Another said, "Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Now you can start over." Start over? With what? A fractured soul? A body that felt like a traitor? For months, I drifted. I went to work. I ate. I slept. I smiled when I had to, but inside, I was drowning. And then something happened. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I started bleeding heavily. Pain, nausea, dizzy spells. I ended up in the ER. They ran tests, took scans, asked questions, and then came the bombshell. I had endometriosis. Severe. Stage 4. Tissue was growing where it shouldn't, clinging to places it didn't belong. The doctor looked at me, kind but blunt, and said, "I'm honestly amazed you lasted this long without collapsing." Suddenly, everything made sense. The fatigue, the pain during cycles, the infertility. It wasn't that I was just unlucky. I was sick, and I never even knew it. I started treatment, had surgery. It was brutal but necessary. Recovery was slow, lonely, but strangely, it also felt like freedom, because for the first time in years, I was focusing on me, not a baby, not a husband, not his mother's twisted expectations, just me. One day, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She was thinner, paler, scarred, but also stronger, because she survived, and she was still here. After the surgery, I took a week off work, just one. I couldn't afford more than that. I wrapped my pain in silence and went back to my desk like nothing had happened. No one asked, no one knew, and I liked it that way. I didn't want pity. I didn't want whispered condolences or the awkward head tilts people give you when they don't know what to say. I wanted space. So I kept my circle small, just a few trusted friends who didn't try to fix me. They just listened. One brought me soup every Friday. Another dropped off her favorite books, little sticky notes marking her favorite lines. Things like, "You survived the burning. Don't apologize for the ashes." Sometimes, I'd sit alone in my apartment, lights low, and whisper that sentence to myself like a mantra. I survived the burning. I survived him. But the thing about fire is, it clears the deadwood. And in that charred silence, something new started growing. I found a support group, people like me, women who had been through things that shattered them, infertility, divorce, betrayal, loss. One woman, Marcy, had nearly died during childbirth, only to lose the baby and her uterus at the same time. She looked at me one day and said, "You know what they don't tell you? You can still be whole without being a mother." I didn't cry when she said it. I just nodded, because I finally believed it. By the end of that year, I felt like I was becoming someone new, someone who didn't walk with her head down anymore, someone who didn't measure her worth by her womb. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Abstracts mostly, chaos in color, anger in brushstrokes. My tiny apartment slowly transformed into a gallery of grief and rebirth. And then, the past came knocking. Literally, I was coming back from the grocery store one Saturday when I saw him, my ex-husband, standing by the entrance to my building, hands stuffed into the pockets of his jacket, like he was just out for a walk and happened to show up where I lived. I stopped dead in my tracks. He turned, saw me, and gave me this soft, almost the silence, his mother's voice dripping poison, and my body, broken and bleeding, while he built a new life without me. I didn't smile back. "What do you want?" I asked. He stepped forward. "Can we talk?" I considered walking right past him, but curiosity, it's a cruel thing. It hooks into your spine and pulls, so I nodded once and led him upstairs. We sat at opposite ends of my couch, like strangers at a bus stop. He looked around. "You've redecorated." I said nothing. He cleared his throat. I heard about your surgery, from Rachel. She still talks to my sister. Rachel, my old coworker. I'd forgotten they knew each other. I nodded. "Okay." He shifted. I wanted to say I'm sorry." I stared at him, waiting. "For what?" He hesitated. "For how I left. For what I said. For listening to my mom instead of standing by you." I folded my arms. "That's a long list. Might want to be more specific." He winced. "You're right. I deserve that." I looked at him then. Really looked. He'd aged. Hair a little thinner. Dark circles under his eyes. But more than that, he looked small. Not physically, spiritually. Like a man who'd realized too late the cost of cowardice. He swallowed hard. "I miss you." The silence that followed was suffocating. I said, "Do you miss me? Or do you miss having someone to take care of you?" He didn't answer. Didn't need to. I could see it in his eyes. He missed the version of me who bent, who broke herself into shapes to make others comfortable. The woman who stayed quiet, kept the peace, held herself together while everything else fell apart. That woman was gone. He looked at the floor. "I've been thinking, maybe we could try again." I laughed. I couldn't help it. A bitter sound with no humor in it. "Try what again? You already chose your side. You burned the bridge. There's nothing left to walk back to." He looked up, panic flickering across his face. But people change. I stood. No. People reveal themselves. And you did. He opened his mouth, closed it, nodded slowly. Then, the words that would seal it all. My mom. She's sick. Cancer. She's been asking about you. I tilted my head. Why? She regrets a lot. I narrowed my eyes. No. She regrets losing control. Not me. He didn't argue. He couldn't. Because deep down, he knew I was right. He stood to leave, hesitated at the door. If you ever want to talk, I don't. He nodded. Then he was gone. Just like that. I closed the door, locked it, stood in the quiet for a long moment. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I smiled. But peace? It's never permanent. Just when you think you've made it to the surface, the world has a way of pulling you back under. It started with a message, not a phone call, not an email. A handwritten letter slipped under my apartment door. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper, carefully creased. The handwriting was familiar, a little shaky, but unmistakable. His mother. Dear Ava, it began. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I wouldn't blame you if you tore this up without reading it, but if you've made it this far, thank you. I almost did tear it up. My fingers actually curled to rip it, but I didn't. The letter went on for 4 pages. 4 pages of half apologies wrapped in vague regret. Not quite asking for forgiveness, but dancing around it. She wrote about how she had been raised a certain way, how she thought a family without children was incomplete, how she had lost her own first child in childbirth, years before I ever met her son, and never really healed from it, how watching me struggle brought all of that back to the surface. She said she acted from a place of pain, and that she wanted to protect her son from suffering, as if divorcing me had spared him any of that. But buried between all the veiled justifications and crocodile tears, there was one thing that stuck out. I see now that I took something from you that wasn't mine to take. You were not broken. You were grieving, and I made you feel disposable. I sat with that sentence for a long time, not because it fixed anything, but because it was the closest thing to the truth I'd ever heard from her. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Sometimes the greatest power you can have is silence. But the universe? It wasn't done with me yet. A month later, I ran into an old friend from college, Mel. We grabbed coffee, caught up on life, laughed like no time had passed. I told her a little about the divorce, about the diagnosis, about how I was finally healing. And then she said something that threw me. You should meet my cousin, she said. He's a therapist, works a lot with women recovering from trauma. I think you'd really like him. I laughed it off. Mel, I'm not trying to date anyone right now. She raised her eyebrows. I didn't say anything about dating. I said meet. It took her 2 weeks to convince me. 2 weeks and 1 text message from her cousin that said, simply, hey, I heard you survived something big. That makes you interesting. I'd love to hear your story. His name was Adam. Our first meeting wasn't even a date. It was 2 people sitting across from each other at a bookstore cafe, swapping war stories like soldiers after the battle. He told me about losing his sister to suicide, about how it turned his life upside down, and how he found purpose helping others make sense of their own wreckage. I told him about my ex, about the mother-in-law from hell, about waking up one day and realizing I'd been living someone else's life. He didn't interrupt. He didn't pity me. He just listened. And when I was done, he said, it's amazing how grief leaves us hollow, but somehow creates space for better things. I didn't fall in love with him that night. It took time. I was still learning how to trust myself, let alone someone new. But Adam didn't push. He didn't chase. He just showed up, 1 text at a time, 1 slow coffee, 1 walk through the park, 1 moment where I looked at him and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. With him, I felt seen, not for what I could provide, not for the shape my body couldn't take, but for who I was, messy, flawed, healing. It had been almost 3 years since my divorce when the final twist of the knife came. I was at the grocery store, standing in the cereal aisle, trying to remember if I had milk in the fridge, when I heard it. Eva, I turned, and there he was, my ex, but he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a woman, young, maybe mid-20s, petite, clearly pregnant. He looked uncomfortable. She looked curious. I raised an eyebrow. Well, this is awkward. He tried to smile. Hey, wow, it's been a while. Almost 3 years, I said. But who's counting? The girl, his girlfriend apparently, smiled and reached out her hand. Hi, I'm Lacey. I shook it. She had no idea what this man had done, what his mother had done, what they had done. I almost felt sorry for her, but then, he said it. She's due in April, he said, resting a hand on her back. It's a boy. I nodded. keeping my face neutral. Congrats, Lacey beamed. We're naming him David, after his grandfather. I blinked. Your father's name was Michael. He shifted uncomfortably. Lacey's dad's name is David. I smiled then. A small, sharp thing. Of course it is. They moved on. And I stood there, staring at boxes of cereal, my hands shaking just slightly, not because I was sad, but because I felt nothing. Not anger, not envy, not grief, just stillness. Later that night, Adam found me on the couch, legs tucked under me, silent. He sat down beside me. Want to talk about it? I shook my head. No need, he nodded, because he understood. Some wounds don't open anymore, not because they're gone, but because they've scarred thick and strong. That night, I wrote in my journal, he got what he wanted, a baby, a new life, and I got what I needed, a soul that's mine again. I thought that would be the end of it. The awkward run-in at the grocery store, the forced congratulations, the realization that we were truly, finally, living separate lives. But peace, I've learned, is not just about cutting ties. It's about knowing they might try to tie themselves back to you. 2 weeks after that run-in, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a nurse, at a hospital near my old neighborhood. She asked, "Are you Eva Langley?" I paused. "Who's asking?" She hesitated. "I'm calling on behalf of Marilyn Benson. She listed you as her emergency contact." My stomach dropped. His mother. I hadn't spoken her name in 2 years. Hadn't heard her voice in 3. Hadn't thought about her since I burned the letter she left me the night Adam stayed over for the first time. "She's not doing well," the nurse continued. "She has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It's progressed." I stayed silent. "She asked for you," the nurse added, her voice gentle. "Said she wanted to speak with you, one last time." I thanked her, hung up, sat on the floor for a long time. Why me? She had a son, a grandchild on the way, a house, a circle of people who had rallied around her back then, when I'd been tossed aside. So, why me? Adam found me on the floor later, still gripping my phone like it might explode. I told him what the nurse said. He waited, then asked, "Do you want to go?" I shook my head, then nodded, then shook it again. "I don't know." He didn't push. I didn't sleep that night, tossed and turned until the sun came up, and I found myself driving across town without even deciding to. It was instinct, muscle memory. The hospital was quiet, cold, smelled like bleach and loss. The nurse met me in the hallway, gave me a look that said she didn't understand why I was here, but also that she was glad I came. "Room 207, she said. I walked in and saw her, smaller than I remembered, fragile, like the bitterness had finally drained out of her and left nothing but skin and bones behind. She looked up and smiled faintly. "Eva." I stood by the door, not moving. She gestured weakly. "Please, sit." I didn't. She sighed. "You look well." I said nothing. She coughed, winced, reached for a cup of water with trembling fingers. "I didn't think you'd come." She nodded. "I know. He still listens to you?" "Not as much," she whispered. "He's angry with me." I almost laughed. "A little late for that." She looked at me then. Really looked. Eyes wet and raw. "You were never broken." I didn't flinch. "I know," I said. She closed her eyes. "I wanted to believe that legacy came through blood, through children. But maybe legacy is who we leave better than we found them." I stood in silence. "I destroyed you," she said. "But you came back stronger, better. And my son, he's not the man you deserved." I nodded slowly. "You're right." She smiled faintly. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Good," I said. She coughed again, this time deeper, longer. It rattled. "Why did you come?" she asked finally, voice barely audible. I looked at her, not with anger, not with pity, with clarity. "To see the ending," I said. "She died 2 days after I left. I didn't go back. I didn't attend the funeral. I didn't send flowers. I didn't mourn. Some deaths feel more like the closing of a chapter than the ending of a person. And hers? That was a chapter soaked in manipulation, control, and quiet cruelty dressed as concern, the kind that leaves you bleeding and still thanks you for your patience. Her son called me once, left a voicemail. She asked for you at the end. She said she wished you'd stayed longer. I listened to that message once, then I deleted it. Because the thing about staying longer, it implies I still belonged in that story, but I didn't. I'd walked out of that fire years ago, and I wasn't about to walk back in just because the flames had died down. Some people only find their truth in endings. I had found mine in survival. 3 months after her death, I got a letter. Not from him, from Lacey. Yes, her. The girl from the grocery store. The pregnant girlfriend. The wide-eyed woman who smiled like she didn't know the ghosts trailing behind the man she was building a life with. She wrote, "Hi Eva, I hope this isn't strange. I know we've never spoken beyond that awkward moment in the cereal aisle, But I wanted to thank you. That stopped me. She continued. I wanted to thank you for being the one before me, for surviving him, for teaching him, through your absence, what it means to be truly seen. He talks about you sometimes, not in detail, but enough. He says you were the strongest woman he's ever known. He says he wishes he'd listened to you more. I don't know what you went through, and I won't pretend to, but I'm raising a son now, and I hope, God, I hope, I can raise him to never treat a woman like she's only valuable if she can give him something. You showed me what strength looks like. Even from the outside, even in silence. I sat on the floor, letter in hand, stunned, not because I needed her praise, but because I finally realized something I hadn't let myself believe until then. Sometimes, the healing you do for yourself echoes in people you'll never even. That's legacy. Not blood, not children, not names etched into gravestones, but the quiet ripple of choosing yourself, again and again, until it creates a wave strong enough to carry someone else to shore. Adam and I got married the following spring. Nothing big. No dress code. Just us, some close friends, a sky full of clouds that looked like they were holding back tears. We exchanged vows under an old oak tree, surrounded by laughter and light, and I remember standing there thinking, I've lived lifetimes since the last time I wore a ring. This one doesn't feel like a promise to keep someone else happy. This one feels like a promise to never abandon myself again. Afterward, we danced in our kitchen with bare feet and cheap wine, and I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I never needed a child to be whole. I never needed a man to be complete. I just needed me, the me who stood back up when the world tried to grind her down, the me who walked away from the wreckage without turning back, the me who stopped begging for love and started demanding respect. I don't know where my ex is now. Still with Lacey? Maybe. Still regretting? Probably. Still wondering how he let me slip through his fingers? Absolutely. But I'm not a ghost in his rearview anymore. I'm a wildfire far in the distance, burning clean, burning bright, and I don't look back. Not anymore. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end with silence, with peace, with a woman choosing herself after everyone else chose to break her. And maybe that's the most powerful ending of all. Not the one where she gets even, but the one where she gets free. Thanks for listening. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's survival. Until next time, stay sharp, stay strong, and never forget, your worth was never theirs to measure.